CNN International. This is World News with Leon Hawthorne at CNN Center.
Hello and welcome. Ahead in our report, absent from Mars for a generation, human research has returned to the Red Planet. The Bosnian Serb president remains in office. Her challengers in parliament have not given up. And the world's largest family reunion, an event designed to preserve not only family ties, but cultural memories. Thanks for joining us. Spectacular images from our nearest planetary neighbour are getting rave reviews back on Earth. The Mars Pathfinder mission got off to a successful start on Friday when the space probe landed on the Red Planet. These are some of the first pictures from Mars in more than 2 decades. They were taken at a Martian surface temperature of -53°C. They show part of the Sojourner rover, airbags used to cushion its landing, and rocky terrain beyond. They also show a partially deflated airbag, which must now be fully deflated to clear a path for the Sojourner. If that can be done, the rover will leave the safety of its landing craft. It's designed to move around the surface of Mars for a week, looking at and testing everything in its path.
We have
NASA scientists at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Southern California cheered when the first pictures began appearing. It's being described by the space agency as an extraordinary day.
The little engine that did. And we are just absolutely boggled by the fact that this fairly complex design that we've been thinking about and stewing over and testing and trying to make work really did the job.
Images being sent back to Earth are to be merged into a mosaic by a computer, eventually forming a panoramic picture of the Pathfinder and the Martian surface. Well, Mars has fascinated people for centuries, and Pathfinder's mission is likely to enhance the intrigue. CNN's John Holloman looks at the planet's enduring appeal.
The first historical references to Mars come from Mesopotamian astronomers in what is now Iraq. They found it in the sky 3,500 years ago. What set it apart from the other heavenly objects then still sets it apart: the color. Even without telescopes, Mars is the red planet. The Romans named it for the god of war. The Babylonians called it Nergal, the god of death and pestilence. When Nergal is dim, it is lucky. When bright, unlucky. Those words were recorded on a cuneiform tablet more than 3,000 years ago. Earthlings have always wanted to visit Mars. It's the closest planet to our own, and as knowledge of the red planet has increased, so has the realization that Mars and Earth are not that different. A day on Mars is just 37 minutes, 22 seconds longer than a day on Earth. Mars is tilted on its axis, just the way Earth is, which means there are 4 distinct seasons there, but because it takes twice as long to go around the sun, the seasons are twice as long. Its size? Just about half that of Earth. Before the first telescopes, it was assumed that Mars was inhabited, and early telescope views confirmed that notion when it was noticed the planet was crisscrossed by what appeared to be canals. They must have been built by Martians. Percival Lowell used a 24-inch refracting telescope to look at the red planet. In 1895, he wrote, "The canals were the work of intelligent beings." He described Mars as older than Earth, with dried-up oceans, continents all smoothed down. He was convinced the canals were an elaborate irrigation system, and everybody believed him. Even after better telescopes showed the planet's barren surface and probes from Earth traveled the surface without finding any sign of life, the allure of Mars continues to draw us to its surface. The recent discovery in Antarctica of fossils which might have come from Mars and which seem to contain microscopic live creatures raises the intriguing question: was Percival Lowell right? And makes the race to the Martian surface even more exciting. John Holloman, CNN Atlanta.
Just minutes from now, a Russian Progress spacecraft is scheduled to be launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Its mission is to take repair equipment to the crippled space station Mir. Meantime, a ground crew is working underwater to simulate the needed repairs. Russia's most famous cosmonaut, Sergei Krikalev, is to be the chief advisor when the work begins around July 17th. And he's leading the underwater training exercises at Russia's Star City. Mir was crippled on June the 25th in a serious collision with a cargo ship. The Bosnian Serb parliament has declared itself in permanent session in Pale.
CNN International. This is World News with Leon Hawthorne at CNN Center.
Hello and welcome. Coming up on this edition of World News, the Mars Pathfinder gives space scientists plenty to cheer about, but there is a problem. British troops move in to prevent a long-standing conflict from playing out again in a small Northern Ireland town. And supporters rally behind Bosnian Serb President Biljana Plavsic as she comes under attack from hardliners. Thanks for joining us. The space probe Pathfinder has run into a little trouble on Mars. One of its airbags has deflated on top of the ramp that's supposed to be used by a remote-controlled rover. Until the airbag can be removed, the rover will have to stay on board Pathfinder. Scientists are working on the problem from Pasadena in California, but as CNN's Dan Ronan reports, this hasn't stopped Pathfinder from sending back some dramatic pictures of the red planet.
These spectacular color pictures are the second batch of images transmitted from the Mars Pathfinder. They show in brilliant detail the Martian soil and hundreds of rocks and hills. They're some of the first pictures taken from Mars in 21 years. Throughout the day, the color and black and white photos were transmitted in rapid succession, showing what appears to be the rugged terrain of the cold Martian surface. The pictures were made just hours after the Mars Pathfinder landed and began operating on the red planet. On board, the microwave oven-sized six-wheeled rover Sojourner. Its deployment could be delayed until Saturday. Officials sent a series of commands to pull the Pathfinder's airbags under the probe so it does not snag Sojourner when it rolls out onto the rocks.
It's a delay, but we never figured that without incredible luck that we would get the rover off on the first day. We were going to try, but if it's the second day or even the third day, it's not a big problem.
It's expected the Sojourner will slowly creep across the Martian surface, taking pictures and sending back information to Earth. So far, the mission is nearly textbook perfect.
I think today the Pathfinder did what no one has done before, and of course they have a number of days ahead now of doing things that nobody has done before because nobody could do them before.
The Pathfinder left Earth some 7 months ago on a 309 million mile mission.
The little engine that could did, and we are just absolutely boggled by the fact that this fairly complex design that we've been thinking about and stewing over and testing and trying to make work really did the job.
21 years ago, NASA sent 2 Viking probes to Mars, and they landed in a generally flat area. Officials say this mission of the Pathfinder will provide much more information because technology is much more advanced. And Pathfinder was deliberately placed in an area that's much more rocky and dangerous. Officials say the landing was nearly flawless, coming down almost in the center of a bullseye within 30 miles of the computer projections.
This is really a spectacular day. It's gone better than we really possibly could imagine. Sometimes we're pinching ourselves saying, is this really real?
NASA wants this mission to begin gathering data about what type of technology will be needed to design future probes and a possible manned mission by 2012. Dan Ronan, CNN reporting.
There are reports of more fighting to the crippled space station Mir and is scheduled to dock with Mir on Monday. Meanwhile, a ground crew is working underwater to simulate the needed repairs. Russia's most famous cosmonaut, Sergei Krikalev, is to be chief advisor when the work begins around July 17th. And he's leading the underwater training exercises at Russia's Star City. Mir was crippled on June 25th in a serious collision with a cargo ship.
At the U.S. Space Agency, NASA are working on a communications problem far away on Mars. The Pathfinder spacecraft landed there Friday, but a small rover on board, which is supposed to travel across the surface of the red planet and record information, isn't taking commands from Earth. Engineers are concerned about the glitch, but they are also celebrating the mission's early successes. John Zarrella has more.
Mars, what it looks like 21 years after the last spacecraft successfully landed and sent back pictures. It has been a long time between snapshots. The color images show a wealth of rocks and boulders, hills, perhaps mountains off in the distance. A geologist's field of dreams. As the images came in, cheers of joy rose from the Pathfinder control room. One of the many moments of exhilaration for the space agency.
What better present can this agency give the nation on its birth date and this landing on Mars? It's just terrific.
So much had gone so well. All the engineers and scientists had expected glitches. But from the moment the vehicle began its descent to the Martian surface, milestones came and went more smoothly than anyone expected.
To imagine we would see the signal right after we landed, to know that the spacecraft was healthy after all of that, and then, of course, to have it come up right on target with the low gain, and then even more spectacularly, to come up right on target with the high gain, pointing within a degree of the Earth. Unbelievable.
There was no lack of emotion at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Even the Vice President called to congratulate the Space Agency team.
And congratulations on doing an absolutely outstanding job.
But perfection would have been too much to expect. The first black and white images showed the airbags, which allowed the vehicle to land so safely, had not retracted completely under the pedal on which the Sojourner rover sat. After testing a plan in a place called the Sandbox, engineers sent commands to the vehicle for the pedal to raise up and the airbags to be pulled in further and the rover ramp to unfold. But the flight team won't know for several hours whether the final command was carried out.
Looks like we will not receive that data in the last transmit session, but I would like to congratulate all of you on a job very well done.
It will likely be late in the day on Saturday before the engineers can get the Sojourner rover off of the Pathfinder lander. The engineering team has managed to save some of the drama for the second day on Mars. John Zarrella, CNN at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California.
Just about 1 hour from now, NASA officials are expected to hold a news conference on the latest details of the Mars Pathfinder mission. We're going to bring that to you live when it happens. Well, from Mars to Mir, help is on the way for that crippled space station. Russia's space agency launched an unmanned cargo ship that is loaded with repair supplies. Mir's three-man crew has been working without full power since the space station collided with another cargo ship that was on June the 25th. Moscow Bureau Chief Jill Doherty picks up the story from there.
The Progress M35 cargo ship blasted off from Baikonur Space Complex in Kazakhstan. 10 minutes later, it was in orbit around the Earth, scheduled to dock with the Mir space station Monday. At mission control outside Moscow, cheers and applause as scientists and officials monitored the launch on a large screen.
On a whole, the complex has been working very well since we corrected the problems with the movement orientation system, the climatic conditions, the humidity conditions, the electricity. That's all up to norm, and the complex has been prepared for a docking process with a Progress ship.
The cargo ship is loaded with more than 2 tons of repair supplies. The most important piece, a new custom-made hatch the Mir crew will install on the damaged Spectre module. Also aboard, half a ton of fuel for Mir, more food and water for the crew, personal supplies and underwear, as well as more scientific equipment for a French astronaut who's scheduled to join Mir this August. The Mir crew was given an additional 6 or 7 days to practice for the repair job they'll carry out on the damaged Spectre module mid-July. The Russian commander, dressed in a spacesuit, will have to enter the depressurized module and reconnect several cables from the solar panels back through the new hatch to the Mir's power system. Russian scientists say it's complex, but can be done.
It's not an easy task, and always it's some part of a danger in connection with every spacewalk. But they performed it, or cosmonaut performed it many times.
Monday's docking of the supply ship is a similar procedure to what caused the Mir collision in the first place. But this time, the crew will be docking it automatically instead of manually. Scientists are keeping their fingers crossed. Jill Doherty, CNN, Moscow.
1997, Martina Hingis.
Nu til en position en lille halv milliard kilometer fra Danmark. Oppe fra Mars sendte rumsonden Pathfinder i nat de mest detaljerede billeder nogensinde fra planetens overflade.
Velkommen til Mars. Sådan ser det ud på overfladen af vor nærmeste nabo i solsystemet. Billedet her blev modtaget på jorden midt i nat og viser udsigten fra rumsonden Pathfinder. Folkene i kontrolcentret kunne ikke styre deres følelser, da de første billedsignaler blev modtaget. Ved et pressemøde i dag præsenterede videnskabsfolk de første optagelser fra Pathfinder, der landede i et ældgammelt udtørret delta.
The delta is now an ideal place to look for the diversity of rocks that contain the history of early Mars. This is what you see. Look in the distance. Those hills are not far away. It's too early for me to tell you how far, but they are fairly close. We're looking towards the southwest, and the sun is over our left shoulder. You can see by the shadows. The sun's about 9:30 in the sky. And those boulders are the rocks that we will be investigating over the next few weeks. And you can see a close-up view of a rock. And I refuse to speculate at this point what that rock is, but we are going to be studying that and hope to tell you soon what our scientific assessment is. So with those images, we are started on our mission. We are returning pictures as fast a rate as we can. Believe me, we want to see them as much as everyone else.
Helt problemfrit går det ikke derop på Mars. En af de balloner, der beskyttede rumsonden under landingen, ligger i vejen for den medbragte Mars-bil. Billedet viser, at rampen til køretøjet ikke kan foldes ud. Den er blokeret i begge ender, men folkene i kontrolrummet i Californien arbejder på at løse problemet, så bilen kan komme ud og køre i landskabet og sende endnu flere billeder ned til os på jorden.
Med fra Pasadena i Californien har vi nu Morten Bo Madsen. Og Morten Bo Madsen, hvor alvorligt er problemet med rampen?
Problemet med rampen er faktisk løst. Man har gjort det i går aftes lokal tid, at man har løftet en af solcellepanelerne, og det er så lykkedes at trække airbags, altså de her balloner, og trække dem ind under solcellepanelet.
Så det var faktisk et problem?
Så de ikke længere ligger i vejen for rampen. Det var et problem. Man turde ikke frigive ramperne, sådan som ballonerne lå.
Men nu kommer køretøjet altså rundt?
I hvert fald den venstre af ballonerne, den man ser til venstre i billederne, den er trukket så langt ind, så man tør frigive den rampe. Den er spændt ned med, rampen er en fjeder, og den er spændt ned med nogle kabler, og når man knækker de kabler, så smutter rampen ud af sig selv, og den lægger sig som en 1 meter lang bane, som roeren kan køre ned af.
Og det gør den nu, og hvornår kommer den afsted?
Man har ikke billeder af, at rampen er foldet ud endnu, men man har billeder af, at det lykkedes at trække ballonerne ind under solcellepanelet. Det man så har gjort sidst på aftenen i går, lige inden man mistede kontakten med landeren, det var, at man sendte de kommandoer, der skal til for at frigive rampen og for at frigive roveren, den lille bil, der skal køre ned ad rampen. Og de kommandoer er sendt, men man har ikke fået bekræftet, at tingene er sket. Det vil man først se, når man får billeder i eftermiddag klokken 7:07.
Men vi har jo set de første billeder. Er I tilfredse med kvaliteten og det, I ser på dem?
Billederne er fremragende. Altså, vi kunne ikke have ønsket os noget bedre. Det er et meget imponerende kamera, der er sendt afsted. Og vi har deltaget i nogle øvelser herovre i løbet af foråret. Og der har vi, om jeg så må sige, leget med kameraet inde i en sandkasse inde i kontrolrummet. Og der har temperaturen været så højt, så billederne ikke har været helt perfekte. Og vi vidste, at billederne ville blive bedre på Mars, men jeg havde ikke troet, at de var helt så flotte, som de er.
Men havde du ventet det, du så ser på dem?
Det havde jeg ikke sådan de store idéer om. Jeg vidste, at der er blevet gjort et meget stort arbejde for at vælge et landingssted, hvor man har meget forskellige klipper. Og når jeg ser på de billeder, der er taget rundt omkring landeren, så ser det super interessant ud. Der er sten af alle mulige størrelser og i flere forskellige farver, og man kan rundt langs horisonten se både bakker og bjerge og kratere. Og det vil gøre det muligt at finde ud af temmelig præcist, hvor man befinder sig på Mars-overfladen.
Og her fortsætter vi så fra Mars til Mir. Et andet sted i verdensrummet var russerne i dag i aktivitet. De sendte her til morgen en raket med vigtige forsyninger op til rumstationen Mir. Med ombord var forskelligt grej, der skal bruges til at reparere den 11 år gamle rumstation. Den har været ramt af flere uheld i den senere tid. Hvis reparationen af Mir ikke kan gennemføres, må besætningen evakueres. Ombord er 2 russere og en amerikaner.
Will happen today, and we're going to complete our 360-degree view, and I'll be able to show you that. But one section that remains will be shown at as soon as we get the data and can process it. So with that, I'll turn the microphone over to Jake to talk about the rover.
Hi. Yes, let me briefly recap the situation that took place yesterday. We had, as you know, we had performed our pedal motion and airbag retraction activities yesterday to give us a better chance of being able to correct a problem of airbag draped over the rover ramps. One of the things we'll try to do today is to send the commands up to deploy those, at least the front ramp, and get some additional imaging of the rear ramp area so that we may even be able to deploy the rear ramp sometime later today. That will be, that will also accompany that will be the actual release of the rover tie-downs. There's 3 tie-downs, one on each side of the vehicle, and a tie-down of the APXS. And that will prepare the rover for stand-up and deployment to the surface. The communication problem, which is the one that we worked late yesterday and overnight, manifested itself as a lack of communication between the complete communication between the rover and the lander. We have indications from some of the lander telemetry that indeed the rover has been mightily attempting to send information to the lander to send back down to Earth, and only the shortest frames of information in those communication sessions have apparently been getting through. We are in a position where we can actually request additional diagnostic data that was collected by the lander during the course of yesterday's activities to help us in attempting to isolate what this problem would manifest itself, how it manifests itself during the day. The other thing is that we did last night as part of the actual nominal execution of activities both on the lander and the rover were that the lander modem was power cycled several times during the night. The rover power cycled its communication system every hour overnight. It actually did a full shutdown every hour overnight. And we had some thoughts that this combination of power cycling would be one means of being able to correct what appears to be something like a synchronization problem or other related cause for this absence of communication between the complete communication between the rover and the lander. Now that information will be, the diagnostic information will be available as well as any telemetry that actually did get through from the rover to the lander during the 3:30 to 4:30 downlink, 3:20 to 4:30 downlink this afternoon. Prior to that, we'll also try 2 other things to help us in diagnosing this particular problem. On the lander modem side, we actually have a redundant power converter that supplies power to the lander's modem. We'll attempt to use that and repeat some communication attempts prior to this actual downlink activity. And also, we are going to attempt to send a short command sequence to the rover this morning and see if that gets through. The short command sequence will basically just reset a couple of parameters, and if it gets through, it'll give us some additional information about what portions of the communication link between the rover and the lander are still functioning and functioning well. But through analysis of that, of the results of those commands and the analysis of the diagnostic data that we will receive from the lander, we may have some better information and some better insight as to what to try next to ensure that we can reestablish solid communications between the rover and the lander. Again, in all likelihood, some of the things that are already taken place over the course of the last several hours may have already corrected this problem, but we will not know that until later today. And Brian already went through the sequence of events if all the rest of this activity goes well, in particular if we do reestablish communications, and that would include deploying the rover to the surface of Mars sometime later this evening. And that's a good place to stop.
I'd just like to add a couple more things. In response to the requests of one of the reporters yesterday, we will up the data rate just to get down more images for you. We'll be effectively doubling the data rate to about 4740 bits per second, starting with our 320 downlink. In addition, we'll be doing some more science observations. We'll be imaging the magnets. We'll be looking into the atmosphere for dust, and we'll be looking at the windsocks, see what the wind conditions are. So keep that camera busy. So that's all we have.
Okay, we'll go to Q&A here. Let's get a microphone down here in front to Bruce Smith.
Bruce Smith, Aviation Week. The fact that you're just getting the shorter frames in, what does that tell you? I mean, what do you suspect? Or does that narrow down the problem somewhat?
Yes, what we've seen evidence of is that the shortest frames of information have been getting through from the rover to the lander, and that's indicative of of a degraded communication link, not an absent communication link. And what we'd like to confirm is at least that of the things we saw yesterday in the telemetry from the lander, that these were primarily associated with activities of the rover's initiation. That is, the rover sending data to the lander or requesting data from the lander. Now, we'd like to check one other communication session that is part of our communication link, and that is the ability to be able to command the rover. We had not done that yesterday. If you recall, the sequences we tried to send up late last night probably did not reach the lander and were not executed. So we'd like to do this short sequence as another test to gather additional information about the nature of that link.
Todd?
Todd Halverson of Florida Today for Brian. I'm wondering if you will deploy the rover before the communications problem has been resolved. And if you do give a go-ahead for the deployment at 7:40 p.m., give me an idea of how long it takes to actually get on the ground.
Well, let me say that if we still have this communication problem, we probably can't. We don't know whether it's a one-way or a two-way communication problem. We don't know whether, in fact, we can command the rover. And we'll learn that later today. We don't really have any way to, if we can't command the rover, then obviously we can't deploy it, because it has to stand up on its own. We can release it, but then it has to drive its wheels together in order to stand up. And so that takes action on the lander's part and on the rover's part. So we need to get this.
Brian Muirhead, who's one of the project managers for the Mars Pathfinder, just giving reporters some bad news. If we can't command the rover, we can't get it to move. This could be a big problem. They don't know whether it's solved or not because of the difference between the light on Mars powering the solar panels and when the rover area on Mars is connected to planet Earth. We got some new pictures. They enhanced some of the pictures they took overnight, and now we know precisely where the Mars Pathfinder is located on the Martian surface. But the headline in all this from Brian Muirhead, the project science manager, is that the rover is at this point stuck there on the Pathfinder lander. It's got its own cameras, as Jim Hill showed us earlier today. And the big goal of this is to get that thing off the Pathfinder, out on the surface of Mars, going around to rocks, sniffing them, finding out what they're made of, and showing us some more of the fabulous pictures like those we have seen in the past 11 hours. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about more of this and show you the latest pictures with a little explanation. CNN's coverage of the Mars Pathfinder landing continues.
Have the right to elect the people who enforce the policy, but not the people who make the policy.
CNN's Beijing Bureau Chief Andrea Campo reports. Plus, the man leading the rebirth of the NAACP. The inspiring personal story of Kwaizi Mfume on Impact on CNN International.
it'd be a great day for musical theatre because...
Can you identify this face?
When I was a kid, I saw musicals really through the cinema.
This is English composer Andrew Lloyd Webber. His musical plays include Cats, The Phantom of the Opera, and Evita. He has won many awards, among them several Tonys and Grammys. Lloyd Webber was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II in 1992 and made a member of Britain's House of Lords in 1996.
I love them.
Hello, I'm Jim Clancy at the CNN Center. Inside Asia is coming up next, except for our viewers in Europe who will see Journey to the Red Planet. First, these are the headlines on CNN. Scientists of the U.S. Space Agency, NASA, have been giving a preview of what's ahead in their exploratory mission to Mars and explained in greater detail about the terrain that they've encountered so far. The first round of color photos were beamed down to Earth less than 24 hours ago. They expect the next communication with the Pathfinder spacecraft in about 2 or 2.5 hours. They won't know for about 5 hours whether the communications problem with the Sojourner buggy has been repaired. It's destination Mir for a Russian Progress cargo ship. The craft blasted off Saturday carrying repair supplies to restore power to the crippled Russian space station. The unmanned ship is scheduled to dock with Mir on Monday. More clashes erupted in Cambodia's capital Saturday as forces loyal to the country's feuding prime ministers attacked each other. At least 4 people have been killed in battles in and around Phnom Penh. A nighttime curfew has been imposed and the city's international airport shut down. The head of the dominant party in India's ruling coalition, Lalu Prasad Yadav, has announced the formation of his own party, threatening an already fragile government. The announcement follows a leadership dispute within the Janata Dal party of Prime Minister Inder Kumar Gujral. Yadav says he will still support the coalition government, but analysts warn the split undermines Mr. Gujral's standing. Those are some of the headlines. Inside Asia is up next for most of our viewers. In Europe, stay tuned for Journey to the Red Planet.
What a day. What a night. What a time to be alive on planet Earth. We sent something to planet Mars today. It is sending back fabulous black and white and color pictures to the Earth. The folks at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, put the project together. And everything has been going swimmingly until about 30 minutes ago, when some of the first pictures that came back showed us something that could be a problem. Maybe not a big problem, we don't know yet. But one of the things that is unique about this mission to planet Mars is that rather than landing on the planet, like most spaceships from Earth do, this one bounced into the side of the planet inside a giant beach ball made up of dozens of individual airbags. What was supposed to happen when the Pathfinder landed on Mars was that these airbags were supposed to retract underneath the Pathfinder and sort of look like that tannish mush that you see there below the solar panels on your screen in this animation. That's not precisely what happened. And as a result, what you just saw in the animation is not going to happen tonight. This is a picture that came down from Mars just a few minutes ago. Instead of being underneath and out of the way of the Sojourner rover, you can see that big tannish airbag is blocking the exit from the Pathfinder of the rover. And it looks like it's even possible that a piece of that airbag might be somehow connected to the ramp. The things that look like rolled up duffel bags are in fact the ramps that Sojourner will use. This is what NASA wants to do to fix this problem. Even though all 3 solar panels, which are called petals, like flower petals, were flat and parallel to the ground, the one where the airbags aren't fully retracted will be raised to a 45-degree angle. And then the automatic retraction system for the airbags will be told to come back on and retract those airbags some more. If it works, the airbags will be sucked in as if vacuumed up underneath the Pathfinder, and then that pedal with the rover on it will lower itself again back down to a level that's parallel to the ground. The two ramps on either side will roll out, and then the rover will go out and do its job. It was hoped that that would all happen about 88 minutes from now, but that's not going to be possible because of the problem with the airbags. They're still scratching their heads in mission control, trying to figure out exactly the best way to do this. And so that's going to delay the first movement out on the surface of Mars of that rover. My colleague John Zarrella has been doing yeoman's work for the past 6-7 days out there at the Jet Propulsion Lab. Oh, buddy, you must be tired at the end of this long day, but isn't it satisfying?
I'm telling you, John, even standing up for 6 or 7 hours today, it doesn't seem to bother me at all. This has been quite an adventure tonight. Isn't it a shame that the only pedal that these airbags happen to be in a bad position on is the pedal that is containing the Sojourner rover on it? So that was a bit of bad luck, but after so much sensational, absolute near perfection all day, it is certainly something that's an acceptable problem that they will, I'm sure, deal with. They're going through the motions now to try and figure out exactly how they're going to handle this and get that airbag retracted so that they can get Sojourner off. And as you said, it'll probably be tomorrow. And joining us here tonight is Story Musgrave. And Story, you haven't been to Mars yet, but an astronaut for many, many years. You've flown in space probably as much, if not more, than just about anybody out there. And what was your feeling as you were seeing these pictures of Mars? I know that every astronaut would love to be the first to put his or her foot down on the red planet.
Well, I've dreamed. My imagination has taken me out there, John. The call is there. It beckons. The beauty of the place, it really does call. And with a brand new technology, with a very efficient small satellite that it came just scooting and screaming out in there, and it's there, it lets you know how doable the whole thing is. But it's like a stepping stone. We go from Earth to this, to Mars, and away we go.
What did you think as you saw those first pictures? The black and whites came out first and gave us some really tremendous images. There's some there we can take a look at right there, what that looked like. Those were the first black and whites several hours ago now. What were you thinking when you were seeing those?
It's just stunning, and you flash back to Viking, and you think of, we've returned to an old friend after 20 years. But the call is there. I mean, you just see it and you feel the pull.
Are you amazed at the clarity of the images and exactly the nature of the landscape? It seems to be quite a bit, and that's a rover wheel that we're seeing in that picture. But the landscape seems to be quite a bit different than what we saw on the Viking missions.
Bigger rocks, but still friendly. Still an incredibly friendly place. We just need a little bit of water.
And that's probably buried beneath the surface in permafrost.
Find out where the water went.
So these first exploratory missions that we're doing, any doubt in your mind? You say the call is there.
The call is there.
Any doubt in your mind when we see things like this after 21 years now that it's going to re-energize an effort to send humans to Mars, do you think?
No doubt. And the visual data is extraordinarily important. The scientific data is, too. The spectrometry data will be incredibly important.
Here's the sandbox. Now, look, we're actually seeing them doing the test to see if at how steep an angle they can get the rover off of one of the pedals. And that would be a rover coming down the pedal and into the sand, and they're... Now, a lot of these kinds of things are not foreign to you, certainly, because they did many of these things within the human space program.
That's testing that simulation, and that's a playground. And it's incredibly useful to not theorize as to how things are going, but to go out there and to mimic and to set up the scenario and to run it for real.
Now, in a more, certainly a situation that was far more potentially dangerous, that's what they did during Apollo 13. They ran simulations.
Yes.
How could they get things fixed? So they're basically, here we are many years later, but doing similar things.
If the fidelity of your training and your simulation devices are good enough, when you need to test how it's going to go up there, you can do it on the ground.
Let's take another look at some of the black and white photographs that we have earlier today. Oh, we're back in the sandbox, so they are still. They're really looking now at, from what I understand, the angles, so that they can see that how much of an angle is going to be too much of an angle to get the Sojourner off, if that's what they end up with, a real steep angle once they bring the airbag in. So I assume that's what they're working with, to see how much they can have to play with. Is that what it appears to you?
I'm not an expert in that area.
This is what I had heard earlier from one of the engineers, that they were really concerned about what the angle might be once the airbags were retracted, if the pedal actually went down many more degrees than it is now. That would present a much more steeper angle when they unfurl the pedal there. So again, they're still playing in the sandbox, as you said, and trying to figure out the best. This could go for quite a while, I would assume.
Story, you mentioned earlier, this is John Holloman, that simulation and training and practice is the key to success. I saw some pictures today in a water tank in Russia of a couple of cosmonauts in spacesuits, and they are beginning to simulate that internal spacewalk that's going to have to take place on Mir. Now they're saying they can't do it before the 17th or 18th of July at the earliest, because they want to give the cosmonauts in space time to practice, and they want to give these cosmonauts in the water tank in Russia a chance to see what's going to happen when they get in this very cramped quarters. You and I have talked on the phone several times about what ought to happen in a well-planned spacewalk to fix the problems on Mir, and we should let our viewers know in about 90 minutes from now, the Progress resupply vehicle with the repair parts for Mir is scheduled to blast off from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. We plan to have live coverage of that. So just, given those circumstances, let's talk about the value of simulation for the spacewalk on Mir. And have you heard any more about how that might work than when we talked the last time?
We sure are having a huge space day with a joint mission up there, the practice on the ground, and SDS-94 up there, and a Pathfinder landing.
These are the pictures from Russia today, by the way, of the cosmonauts in the water tank doing their simulation.
I have always emphasized that in close quarters you need to do more water tank choreography than in any other condition. When you have to take your body and fit yourself into very close quarters, it's like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle as to how you're going to get in there, and especially if you have to get in there and maneuver equipment in and out of closed spaces.
And that pretty much is the Spectre modules being simulated underwater there, which the cosmonauts are going to have to go into on the 17th or 18th. Story, we need to go ahead, jump in.
And water is the place to do that. And the next thing to do is, once you've worked it out on the water, how do you communicate to the people on board your geometric experiences? And so that's an art form in itself, how you get the geometric experience here to them.
Right, because these cosmonauts have never put on two spacesuits inside their space station and tried to do work inside. They've been in an airlock on the way to do an outside spacewalk. We're going to take a quick break. Story Musgrave, John Zarrella, it's good to see both of you and that you're both holding up on this most fabulous day in space and back here on Earth, because we're getting to look at it. Stay with CNN. We'll be right back. NASA engineers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory getting very excited about the fact that they were able to do something they have been working on, most of them, for more than 5 years. That is taking a $100 million, just a little bit bigger than a shoebox-sized rover, and plant it successfully on the surface of planet Mars. What a moment for these people. This is the live picture in Mission Control now. They have had a long day. It is 7:44 in the evening at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California, And they have been there putting in a very full day, controlling this mission from the ground, but mostly, based on what we've been told, just letting the Pathfinder do its own thing. It has a computer on board that has been doing everything just like clockwork. One little problem. CNN's John Zarrella joins us from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory to talk about that and what kind of day this has been. John?
Well, I tell you, John, that, I think back it was December 4th when they lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center very early in the morning, a rather chilly night even for Florida back then. And here they are 6 months later to the day, and they're on Mars. And I remember interviewing Brian Muirhead, who's the deputy project manager, in the clean room a month before that, wearing our white bunny suits, and Brian saying, nobody would have given us half a chance of getting as far as we are today, and that was just getting to the clean room. And here they are now on Mars. We've had fabulous black and white images. We've had fabulous color images back from the red planet, and they've run into the one snag that they've got to work around. And there are those black and white images. The Story Musgrave, you're with us here, and we were talking about how that's an airbag there in the foreground. We were talking about how these things are tested and retested, and how now when they run into a problem, they'll go into the simulator to figure out. And you did that with the Hubble repair mission. You had to do tremendous simulations, didn't you?
It's basically play with physical things, as opposed to speculate and guess. And that's what they're up to.
These, you were saying, now there are a lot of rocks there, but again, that's quite a bit more in the way of what I thought. I didn't think there would be as many of the large boulders that there appear to be, and in the distance, hills, and it's a different topography.
You have to ask them, but maybe they didn't guess to have quite that much in the water outflow.
And there's what appears to be one of those hills in the distance. And again, this is supposed to be an ancient river, an ancient outflow where a tremendous flood eons ago swept down through here, left and deposited rocks and all kinds of goodies for the geologists to get a look at. So it really is critical, isn't it, that they get Pathfinder's Sojourner robot off of the vehicle so they can start getting up to rocks